Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about the Google Apps script engine. It's not something I was going to talk about, but I was using it as the host for another application, another video I'm doing. So I thought it'd be an interesting video to make to go through this. I'm going to talk about the general architecture, see what it does, we'll give a basic function and how that automatically updates the spreadsheet when you use it from there. It's interesting. A bit more of a substantial example where we'll talk about dates and manipulation, and we'll talk about parameter decoration, and I'll mention that maybe 2 or 3 times as we go through this too, because it's quite important really. We'll talk about local debugging, where you can debug your function separately from the spreadsheet itself. We'll talk about doing some remote services and a little chat about regions and where you are in the world versus where you're getting executed. So if we just talk about the general architecture, really, it's it is a web app. So you have your browsers there. So you have your Chrome, Edge, and Firefox, and they all talk to the internet, into the Google Cloud, where the Google App Script engine runs. If I don't mention this again, it's the V8 engine, so it's very, very quick. It has built-in wrappers to Google services. I think there's about 45 of them in all, but some common ones are Gmail and YouTube. So you can run an app, for example, in Sheets, which goes and pulls in all your new email, does what you want to do, groups them by people, all that kind of stuff that people like marketeers want to do. There's also YouTube, which is interesting to YouTubers, so you can go and see how your videos are going, which is good. And also the App Engine will talk out to the internet as well, to customer services or services you've built to import into the spreadsheet. So it's quite an interesting little environment. And let's get cracking. Okay, so what we need to do is just open a spreadsheet. Just create a new spreadsheet. If you have an account, so log into your account. And we'll do that, and we'll just give it a name as well. So we're doing that. Whoops, do that. So we'll just do functions for Google applications script. Okay, and saved it to your drive. Everything's on the shared drive. You can't access the files locally unless you cut and paste them wherever. So if we dive into the script editor, so it's on extensions and then app script, and we come in here. And there's our little IDE. When it fires up, there we go, and you get your default my function. So I'm just going to change that name, and we're just going to call this SA1. We'll do that, and we'll give it a parameter of parameter 1, and a very simple function. We're just going to return P1 multiplied by 2. Do that, and I'll just save that. You can run it, won't do a great deal. This is all going on in the cloud in the background. There we go. So there's execution log, which you can turn on, and we'll be looking at extensively as we go through. So it doesn't do anything, hasn't done any messaging or whatever. We'll get back to that. So if we just go back to the actual spreadsheet, and remember the function's called SA1. So usually when you use a function, you would go for something. You just start keying and you get the name. If we start keying here, well, it doesn't find it, and we'll come back to that, but it is still there. All right, so we're just going to put 10 in there, for example. Does loading, there we go, so it's 20. Now the convention is to use uppercase in functions, so I've done them in camel case just to make them stand out from the inbuilt functions. Now you can see on our function we said it's times 2, so we put 10 in and the value is 20. If we change this to 3 and we save that, not all happens. And if we switch back to the sheets, it's actually updated in real time to do that. So that's really useful. I think if you have a very large spreadsheet, that's going to cause potentially a lot of problems, but that's what it does. Now, if we just go back to here as well, and we'll just talk about the flow. Now, it is JavaScript sitting underneath, so it will do JavaScript things, and when we talk about debugging, we'll see what goes on. So the the command to get some tracing information out is logger.log. So if we say we're in P1, sorry, we're in SA1. Oops. This is one of the lovely things of these editors that you get in your way sometimes. There we go. And we can now run this. It saves it automatically, does that. So there's our little message there. And as you can see, it's not associated with the function. So if I do this now, and I do logger.log, and I'll say we're in SA1, lowercase, in SA1, and we do that, and then we'll just say in global. I just call it global, really. So we do that, and we run it, and the execution log, you can see it's actually doing the global stuff first. So as you would do in normal JavaScript, you initialize variables and whether or not set things up, then it calls the function SA1. And that's because I've actually told it to do this, to select the function to run. There is only one in there. So we can add another function. And we'll just call it SA2 because I'm pretty boring that way. And we'll give it a parameter. We'll say logger.log. We'll say in SA2. Oops. Okay, so we run it, remember SA1, so it's this function. So we run that. We get our global message and we're in SA1, but I actually want to run SA2. So we'll do that, and then we'll run it again. And there we have SA2, and the global's not there at all. So what we can do here is we'll just say return, whoops, return, what should we return it as? So we'll say it's P1 times 100. So we'll do that. So we'll save those. So SA2, so we go back to here and we'll just say SA2, and as you say, we don't get that value. There we go, there's 100. We go back to say multiply 200, just hit C, save, back, and there we're going to 200. So that's the basic way that the whole thing works. Pretty clever, really. But this annoying thing about not being able to see the actual function names. Okay, so what I've done is I'm not a remarkably fast typer, so I've just pasted in what I call the decoration. This is where you actually tell the script engine what the function's actually going to do. So it's kind of like when you use things like C# and you put attribute decorations, right? So what I'm saying here is for some function SA1, only because it's the comments that are above SA1, we've got a parameter comes in, then it's an integer, and I've just called it IP. It doesn't really need to be a number, but we'll see these values later. This is returns, then this is just comments really. So it does return a number, but we do have to tell it it's a custom function. So that tells the runtime engine what's going on. So if I now go back to the spreadsheet, and remember it was called SA1. If I now say SA1, it appears in the list, and it says multiplies the password in number by another number. So there's the words here. Multiplies the passed in number by another number, so we get that. We go back to here and it will tell us the name of the parameter. So I've just said P1 and do that. Let's go back to 6, yeah. So there's P1, there's the name of the function. Now we should be able to just pull this down as well, but we'll just check that SA2 still doesn't appear. So we'll say SA2, yeah, that's still not there. So we'll do that. So we'll just cut and paste, oops, sorry, this down here, and we'll put that into the SA2. And it's just exactly the same text. We don't really need to tell it anymore. So we'll save that. We'll go back. We'll say SA2, which is not there. That's very unusual, isn't it? Now, sometimes it can be very slow. So just let me have a look back here. Is this something we haven't done? If I just run that, yeah, we have no errors really. So let's go back into here, SA2. That's interesting, isn't it? So why isn't that there? I just had a quick look at the code. And what it appears to be is because I've got your duplicate parameter there, so I'll just put him back to P1, save that, then we go back to SA2. Now, I wonder if it's just slowness. What we'll do is we'll try another. We'll actually put function 3, and we'll see what happens. Can't beat live debugging, can you? Do that, so we'll call it SA3. And we're in SA3. We'll save that. And we go back to here. So we don't want to do anything there. So we'll just take that out. New column. SA3. I think it must just be timing it takes to do that, because it is being saved locally and coming back. So that seems to be okay, and probably something that we just need to watch for in the future. Now, interesting enough, if I actually change that to say P2, we'll save that, and we go back to, we'll just clear that out, another line, SA3, and it's telling us the name parameter P2, and I do 34, and I've got an error. You hover over the error, and it says P1 is not defined in line 35. So you go back to line 35, there we are, and it's because we're using that original line. So if we just change that to 2, save that, go back, and that auto refresh just pulls everything together. So that's pretty good. It's pretty good. So we've talked there about how the logging stuff. So again, I'll just run that again and see that. So it says is SA1 because that's the nominated function. So if we change that to 2 and do a run, and we get the global, and we're in SA2, so we do that. One of the interesting things about this editor is it'll actually have an opinion on how things should be formatted. So if I do that, that's SA2, that will quite happily run. That's not a problem. But you can say, actually, I'd like you to use the system formatting. So we can do format document, and there we go. So it actually formats everything up. It's really, really quite nice. So let's try that again. So for some reason, we've got a load of tabs in the front of our function name. We want to do some indentation. So we do format document, and we're back there. So that's kind of the introduction, how functions hang together. So we'll now move on to something a bit more sophisticated. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll create another script file. So we actually just click the plus sign. Click the plus sign, and we'll say script, and we just have another one, so we can say funcs. So that's what we're doing there. So we'll say we're going to have a file called funcs. And I'll just remove this one because I don't really want that. So I'll just delete that. There we go. Yeah, I want to delete that. So then we go into funcs. You always get that my function created, and we don't need that. Now the interesting thing to remember is the way the project is structured. So I'm just going to call it functions project. It's all these files belong in one project. So the file that's in code.js, which is the default, the one we've just been using, and the funcs will all hang together. So when you run them, I think it just merges into one big script and runs, but we'll see that in a second. So I've actually created a new function. We deal a lot in my company with offshore people in India. So sometimes you get a spreadsheet and there's a date and time in GMT. It'd be quite useful to see where it is in Indian time. Probably not a real thing anyone want to do, but I just needed some kind of example here for the code. So I've just created a function called shift to IST. So we pass in a date and time, and it comes in there. I've used the logger to show what the values are coming in. So we do that to that value. We'll show the timestamp, so we'll run this in a second, see what goes on. We're going to parse the date. Now, apparently you shouldn't really use parse anymore, but that takes a value in and it will do all it needs to do to get it into an epoch, which is in milliseconds since the 1st of January 1970. So there we go. So we'll log that value, and I'll show odd little thing there really with the way where we display things as well. Then I just work out one out in milliseconds, so that's 60 seconds times 60 minutes times 1,000 milliseconds. Could put it as a constant, but it's just to show how things can do that. So then we log that out again. We then move we get our shifted date by taking the epoch of the current date that we've just done and just add the milliseconds, but times by 3.5 because Indian Standard Time is 3.5 hours forward from Greenwich Mean Time. We're in British summertime at the moment, but it's just for demonstration purposes. So you put some values in there to work out what's going on. Then I'm just going to log that as well to show that. Then we convert that date back into a GMT date, and we can display that as well. So we'll see that logged, and we'll also return it back into the function that's calling it. Now put some debugging stuff in here, how to do local debugging, and we'll see that later. So one of the problems is when we saw in the previous example, when I had the parameter wrong, you actually do get an error, and you will get an error message displayed. But that's probably about as far as you can go. So you don't actually get a debug window opened up. I think you used to get that in VBA, you would do that. And to be honest, you might be able to do it in the scripting engine, but I haven't found a way to do that. It's probably because you are running in a server somewhere in the rest of the planet, so you're probably just never going to see that. So if I take this name, well, all I have to do is I've got another spreadsheet which has an example of a date in, which is if by magic I've just pasted it in there so we don't see it. So that's just a formatted date and time that will work with the pars. So what we can say here is we'll just make this a bit wider. It's always a bit funny, the whole G-script thing. There we go. So now it's now one. So we called our date. Do you know? I've actually forgotten what it was called now. So we do that. Shift to IST. I've been typing it for several days. Shift to IST. Let's try that again. So why? That's because I hadn't saved it. There we go. So we go back. SHIFT. Again, I think it is just taking time to do this. So we'll just come out of that again. Let's do that. The line. And there we go. So yeah, it is a time-based thing coming back. So the message output is a converts a past-in timestamp to India Standard Time. So we'll just click that, and it's asking for the source stamp. That's what we want. So the reference is A14. So we put A14 in there. Oops. Takes a little time, and there's the date. There we are, date time. So we do that. So there's another format, wasn't there? So we could do number, and that's today. There we go, Friday the 13th of May. Excellent. Right, so we've got that now. So we've got our little project, so we know that works, and we call into it, and we come back. Now, we can actually run this. So if you need to do some debugging, we can do that now. In fact, I'll show you. If we do shift to IST now, do that, so just run the function. Yeah, you get not numbers. It just really doesn't like it because it's got no parameter passed in, really. So what we need to do is, it's just something I've just worked out to do. I don't know if it's standard practice. So we'll actually execute a function called do nothing. So we'll then run that. Now see that global there? That's actually in our other script. So if you go there, that's that message that gets displayed there. So if I just change that to SA global, for example, save that, and we go back to the Sheets engine. Whoops, sorry, back to back to here. And we'll do this run this again using there in SA global, so it actually picks that up. As I say, it's all one big file, so we do that. So this is why you've got to be a bit careful. So we've got our function. We've seen this is quite happily gets called from the engine. That's not a problem. We do all these logging things. We can have a look at that. In fact, yeah, I said I was going to show. Oh, sorry. In do nothing. Okay, so we come down. So I've actually commented out the debugging stuff that we're actually going to do. So I'm going to take these two lines out. So what we've got here is because of that global running, the very first thing that will happen will be this code will run. Now we've told it to execute do nothing, but because it does this first, it does that, then it has to do something. You have no option. You can't just run the script. So we will just do the debugging lines that we need to do. So we're just setting a test value up. So that's Wednesday when we did that. So we'll call the shift. So we'll just move that 3.5 hours forward. And then I'm just going to log out that answer. So effectively, we were making no changes to allow debugging within this particular function. You're just calling it in the same way that the engine would do it. So that kind of makes things a bit more straightforward to do that. So I'll just comment those out now so that they will run. So we'll do the do nothing. We'll do a run. And there's our execution log going. So I'll just move this up slightly and do that. So there's our global message. We did that. So we have some messages. So we've entered the shift with Wednesday the 11th, which was the example I gave. That's the epoch date. Now it's done it as exponential notation, which is odd. But when you do the in the console console log logger.log, it actually expands it out. So beware of that. Really, it's going to display your data in two different formats. It's probably best to put a little text on the front. That's where we've got. So we've got shifted epoch there, which is not the one, but we'll see that. So we've done the shifted epoch there, and we've displayed that as that number. That's really good. Then we display the date. So we've actually moved it forward from 10:57 to 13:27, which is 3.5 hours. So that's basically how to do debugging within here without going into the debugging engine, which is a lot more complex, and we won't be looking at here. So what you could do is just add a line on here and just say my return answer, save that, run that. Whoops, run that. There we go. So there's my return answer. So that's got the value passed out. So that's a little bit more of a sophisticated example, and we've got the parameters in wherever. So it actually does look like a real function now as far as the world is concerned. We get that. As I say, the convention is to have them all in uppercase, but I've just done them in camel so we can see those. So great stuff. So the last part of the presentation I'd like to talk through is how to make calls out of the engine. So you're not restricted, you're just running code that's stored in the Google world, if you like. So this is just a very, very quick example which has all the decoration and whatever not. World Time API, it's a free API. Everything you call, no, it's free. Just I think just ask you don't absolutely thrash it, or they will take it down. But I've just used this for this particular example. It takes in a time zone, so Europe/London. It's the only UK one it has is London. So I'm in Manchester. I can't do that. So we're just making the call with the time zone in that format, and I've just logged out the response, which is a JSON response. So if we just run that now. Right, now what we've got here, so we've got that essay that's still hangover from where we were before. So if I just go into the functions, take that out. Wrong one. Go. There we are in our essay global. So we'll just take that out. Save that. Just pop back to the real time. Run. And there we are. So it's gone. Now you'll see there. That's the time when I'm actually doing it now. You'll also see there's an IP address, a client IP address. That's 107.178.192.11. So I'm just going to cut that out. Now, just about every time I've run this function, I've got a different result. So we'll do that. It is the IP address of the server which issued the call into World Time API. So not where you're running, not your browser, not on any VPNs. It's actually the Google environment. So if I just swap over now to one of these IP address lookup functions. Yep, so if we just put in the IP address into, what's this one, what is my address.com, give an IP, and it looks like it's in California. So, so it looks like whenever I do anything, it actually is going through Google's network and across the internet and wherever, across to California and back, which probably explains for the slight slowness when it's going on. It also could be that Google have confuse it and he's actually running in London somewhere. I don't know. But that's it really. So it's just bear in mind when you make a call that you're actually running somewhere in the world, which may not be legal for your particular kind of data. I haven't seen a way to actually tie yourself to a region like you might get in AWS or Azure. There's possibly a way to do it, and it might be in the payable subscriptions that you get that option. But yeah, it's just beware really. So that's it, guys. So thank you for sticking with it. If you can do the old subscribe and like and click the bell and all that kind of stuff, that'll be brilliant. So that's it for this video. So I think I'll do a few more on AppScript. There's a lot more things to understand, and I'll see you as soon as I can. So cheers then.